So we just have to keep that in mind. Just on our panellists, I'm just going to go in the order they are in our packs. You'll see the information there. To my left, Richard Coulter, assistant editor of the Bristol Evening Post. Before this, he was the chief sub-editor of the Post and has also worked for the Bath Chronicle and the Sunday Times. His career in journalism began in Gloucester Citizen as a news reporter. He was born in Glasgow, educated at Glasgow University and Iowa State University, and his journalism postgraduate qualification was at University of Wales, Cardiff, and I went to University of Wales, Swansea. Yeah, a big rugby match every year. You weren't as good as us. Phil Gibbons, to my right, is a station manager for Bristol's community radio station BCFM 93.2. Many of you will know about that. After gaining honours at University of West of England, he worked in both BBC and commercial radio, and has worked as a consultant and broadcaster in Swaziland and a Swaziland state broadcaster. He's been a tutor at University of Gloucestershire, course leader at City and Guild's radio course for the City of Bristol College, where he's been teaching for over 10 years. As director of BCFM, Omni Radio and the Community Radio Association, and on diversity panel for CICC, University of West of England. Phil to my right. Stacy Yelland on my far right, did a degree in German-Spanish politics at University of Southampton. Before coming to Bristol in 2003, university, she's a brand manager of the Guardian newspaper, employed to promote the paper on campus and increase student readership. Took on some press and communications work for the BTCV team. She started working for Community at Heart in 2007 and has been involved in redesigning the newspaper, a website redesign, press coverage, events, writing and producing annual reports and other publications. In 2008, she completed the Chartered Institute of Public Relations Advanced Certificate. And on my far left, we have Angela Frain from BBC Radio Bristol. She's the news editor there. She's worked at the BBC for 10 years, and in that time she's worked for 7 BBC local radio stations in a variety of roles, including programme and communities editor. She joined BBC Radio Bristol in July 2009, so brand new to the city. So could we welcome the panel, please? And I think Matthew and Ruth are just going to keep an eye at the back just to make sure we keep on time. What we're going to do is each group from your discussions has come up with a couple of questions for the panel. We're going to go through each group at a time and just ask you to come up with one of your questions, and we're just going to give maybe just 2 or 3 of the panellists each a chance to come back on each of those questions to make sure we have enough time to get through as many of them as possible with some good analysis and some quality feedback. So can we start with group number 1, please? If you could just raise your hand who has the question for group number 1. Introduce yourself, the theme of your group, and then share your question, please. Would you mind standing if you're able to stand?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dom from Independent People. The theme of our group is about, look it up, film to promote your work. And the question is, the speech this morning from Deborah was really inspiring about the morals, the values, the commitment and the governance of the voluntary sector and what we can teach other sectors. So what's the best way of selling and packaging that in Bristol and keeping it current?
I suppose because in many ways they are the big dogs of local media, maybe we come over to yourself, Angela, in the first instance, maybe looking at the BBC's take on that. Best way of this whole sector packaging and selling their stories and their values, you know, on a broader
specifically in terms of film or in terms of everything? Was it looking specifically at?
I would say everything. Our group is about film, but it would be probably put film in I mean, it would include everything the best way.
I think for the BBC it is, particularly for radio, it's about the voices that we get on the radio. That can really sell a story. So when you are looking at something that you want to promote, to first of all think what you want your end product to be and how you want your end product to sound. The people that you want to use to try and get that message across. We do look for case studies, human interest stories, call them what you will. The person who's actually using the service, is benefiting from the service, is going to be able to tell that to somebody else, because when you're listening to radio in your home, you're hearing that voice and you want to be able to empathise with it, you want to be shocked at it, you want to be surprised, whatever emotion we're trying to get across through the radio, you need to have that as a voice, and that needs to stand out. if you've got somebody who's able to give their message powerfully and speak openly and honestly, that will always strike a chord with people. So I think a human interest angle or a case study angle is always very useful. In terms of radio specifically, we have programmes that are set at set times, and those times aren't always the most the nicest times of the day. You know, most people listen to the radio between 6 and 9 in the morning, and we ask that people come into the studio, very practical things like come into the studio, be up for doing those sorts of times. So having that flexibility within your interviewees to be able to come to us at the times that we need you to be there to get the most out of the story. And also, if you view it as the most people are listening, you're reaching a much bigger audience if you can do it like that, to be as open as possible to those sort of suggestions. Sorry.
No.
I don't know.
You got another point?
Just keep going if you want.
Oh no, right. We'll move on just for time.
Yeah,
there is an interesting point in there. When I was working at Radio Bristol, you'd phone people up to try and get them on your live breakfast show that runs between 6 and 9, and they'd say, I can't come in at 7, can I do it at 9:15? I say, no, it's live. So there is a thing about being flexible and, and available when we're trying to get on there. Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks very much. I'd just like to sort of concur with what Angela said about the real people thing. It's very, very important that we get the real experiences from people. The other thing that is sometimes a bit of an issue with us is that somebody will say, I've got this tremendous story and I've got this tremendous person who's done this tremendous thing. And we say, great, can we have a photograph of you and this tremendous person? And they say, well, I don't really like to be in the paper, that sort of thing. I don't really want to be quoted in this. Don't want my name used, all that sort of thing. And I think if you're going to play this game, you've got to be willing to put yourself up, and the people you deal with have got to be willing to put themselves up. A couple of other small points that I've kind of noticed. I spent like 5 minutes just walking around some of the stands before we started this. One thing I think groups like yourself, particularly in the voluntary sector, have got to watch is the jargon and language that you use, the gobbledygook that goes on. I mean, I was wandering around there, it's just, can I just be open and honest here? It's just gobbledygook and jargon all over the place. People don't know what these things mean. Even yourself, if you don't mind me saying, sorry, what was your name?
Dom.
Dom. Even in the question, using words like governance. Now, I know that that's probably what you talk about, but believe you me, nobody knows what that means. And there is a lot of that kind of language goes on, and we will get sent press releases, and we have no idea what they mean most of the time. So we then have to go and try and decipher it, and then we maybe decipher it wrongly because we've got a deadline, and then you come back and say, well, you got that all wrong, blah, blah, blah. Well, plain English, plain speaking, get the point over, get the people who are involved in the thing in front of us. Yeah, that's a couple of points I would make.
Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll come and give you a chance to come back on that. Any thoughts? I know there's a thought here because you had your hand up. Can we just get one come back from the floor here, just on what you've heard so far? Remember that question was around just around packaging our values and how we get those over in the media.
I don't tend to need a microphone actually. It's just one.
Could you
point.
use it though, just in case?
Okay. It's just the point that. Richard Coulter raised there about the use of gobbledygook and the language section. I agree with you totally. It drives me nuts, and I'd love us to drop it, but we have to get trained, if you like, into that way of thinking for the funding applications, because we're towing the party line for the funding applications, because that's what funders, especially local authorities, seem to want to hear. But I agree, it doesn't mean anything to most people.
The problem is that when it gets right down to the brass tacks of it, and you read the stuff, nobody knows what it means, and you just completely switch off. And what happens is people think, well, this seems worthy and important, fantastic, but actually it's a complete switch off because I don't really know what it means. And at that point, we'll move on. They turn the page. You're right.
Okay.